Hello, I'm Bas Hamer from Possum Labs, and today we'll continue our series of tutorials and we'll be talking about how you can create new data. And this is assuming that you are using the core version of the framework. So we'll go to Visual Studio and we'll take a quick look at what's going on when it comes to new data. So the feature in question we're trying to deal with is as follows. One moment. We want to create data. And there's two things we want to do, right? One, we want to be able to create new data as just a record, but we want to also create multiples. And we want to be able to show how you can use previous data to create new data as well. So what we're doing here is we create two objects, and the one below creates one object. The var is effectively the name of the variable. This is a magical column name. You need to have a column called var. If not, you'll get an exception. And it's a table input, so you can do anything you can normally do in tables or anywhere else, where you can specify any of the fields that are part of your object, as well as refer to fields that are of objects that have already been created. So what's happening here is we create user 1, which is a title of Benelish Hero, and user 2, which has a title of Rokov Care Ridges. And then if we look at this uduplicate title option, we effectively create again a user with the same title of Benelish Hero because we refer to the title of user 1. So let's take a quick look at what we have to do to actually make this work. A lot of it is going to be handled in the repository step base again. And what we're going to have to do in our scenario is we are going to have to create this particular user. So what's happening is when we create user, it will actually fall through. It automatically does a conversion into a dictionary of the key, which is the var string, and then user objects. And we'll fall through, and we'll end up in here. What we're doing here for each of these users is we apply a template, which we're not going to worry about right now. We decorate the item, which we're not going to worry about right now. And we do any characteristic transformations, which we don't have to worry about. The only thing we really worry about is this part down here. For each of these keys, we add a user, right? This is the dictionary and the key. And this goes into the base class where we do all the work. So let's take a quick look at what we do in the base class. What we're doing here is we're doing a quick check to make sure we don't have something by that name. If not, we throw a custom error message. And otherwise, we just add it to the repository. The repository, as we saw in the previous tutorial, is registered with the resolver. And this is what makes the whole thing work together. Now, the conversion that's happening, right, because we have this implicit conversion that's happening where we turn our table into a dictionary of string and user. This is also in this repository step base. We register a few conversions. So we can convert items into a list, right? So if you're expecting a list of users, it will do a conversion. If you want a dictionary, it's effectively the same as a list, except it requires this var column, right? And over here, we do a check to make sure that this is called var and it does exist. And if it doesn't, it will actually complain about it. And we also have the normal transformation, which uses the interpreter. So what's happening there is that if you have a column of type, store, for instance, and you have a store repository, what it will do is it will actually use this transform method. Actually, it will use the resolve method or the interpreter.get behind the scenes to actually get the information. You'll see this execute or return null when error occurs. This is a safety method, so this is effectively disabling these step argument transformations in the case that you have had an error in your particular scenario. I've run into some scenarios where it would mask exceptions. I don't know if this is still present in the latest version of SpecFlow, but that's where this code comes in. It doesn't do anything unless there is an exception that's already occurred in your test, in which case it effectively starts returning null as not to mask the original exception. So yeah, that is pretty much everything that we're worried about here. Let's talk a little bit more about the repository. So we have the transformations, right? We have a transformation to a list, to a single, and to a dictionary. And we also have some additional functionality in here as well that's important when it comes to new data, and that is that we do some logging, right? So we grab the base logger, we create a new section, and then it will dump out all of the information here, I believe as YAML by default. So that makes it a little bit easier to parse while also being fairly easy on the eyes when you have to look at the log file. And this is where this method comes in that we looked at in the first lesson, where we have the log format, right? The log format kicks in this particular area where if it is an entity, we will use the log format to specify what's going on. I think that is most of what we have to worry about in this particular chunk of the code. Some of the things have not been implemented by default, but you can create them if you need to, and that's it. So yeah, creating new data, it's relatively easy. It's fairly powerful, right? It allows you to specify a lot of values. It can allow you to ignore values, and you do have the ability to do this type of checking in here. Also down below, you see that you can use in this validation step that's available, you can use variables on both sides. You don't have to just do it on this side only. You can use it over here as well. All right, thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you in the next lesson where we'll be talking about templates.